Every culture is full of unique traditions and artistry that demonstrate humanity's capacity to create beauty. But some of those traditions are at risk of being lost in the face of modernization. In the northeastern region of Thailand, known as Isaan, there is a traditional method of creating beautifully dyed fabric known as mudmee. Ban has been making this kind of fabric for almost half of a century. She loves this traditional form of fabric artistry and longs to share her passion with the next generation.
เวลายายตายไปก็ไม่มีใครสืบทอดไม่มีใครเอาไว้ก็เสียไปเฉยๆเนาะเสียดายวัฒนธรรมทันสมัยเกินไปก็ไม่ดีเด็กมันจะไม่ใส่ใจในประเพณีของเราเลยถ้าทันสมัยเกินไปนะโบราณเกินไปก็ไม่ดีต้องอยู่ตรงกลาง
It used to be that each household in Isaan had a loom, and each woman knew how to transform cotton seeds into beautiful clothing for their family.
ตอนยายยังเด็กถ้าไม่ทำแบบนี้ก็ไม่มีอะไรใส่ต้องช่วยตัวเองทุกอย่างถ้าอยากได้ฝ้ายก็ทำสวนปลูกฝ้ายแล้วก็มาทำเป็นเส้นลำบากตอนยายยังเด็กเราต้องไปปลูกฝ้ายเองแล้วก็มาทำให้เป็นเส้นเองแล้วก็มาเป็นผ้ามัดหมี่หลายขั้นตอนใช้เวลาเป็นปีกว่าจะได้นะทุกวันนี้มันทำง่ายเพราะมันมีโรงงานทำมาให้
Even now, with the availability of factory-produced yarns and dyes, which reduce the effort and time needed to produce a piece of cloth, the process of handcrafting each piece takes many days of skilled labor. Ban starts with plain white yarn. Next, she preps her equipment needed to string up the yarn. Then she carefully wraps the yarn, 2 strands at a time, up and down the frame many times, being careful to count the number of wraps precisely to ensure her design will come out evenly and be the right size cloth for whichever particular project she is working on. Once the yarn has been precisely wrapped, she blocks out sections of the strands by wrapping them with a resist. The resist blocks the dye she will later apply to the yarn from reaching blocked out sections. This will preserve the original color of the blocked out areas during the dyeing process, creating a beautiful and intricate pattern. Ban's resist is made by tightly wrapping plastic around the yarn. In the past, portions of the banana plant were used to form the resist. This step in the process can take several days as each individual portion of the resist is carefully applied. Ban makes sure that each segment lines up with her overall design and is nice and tight to ensure a crisp pattern. There are countless traditional patterns that Ban and other artists draw from and modify to design each piece. Once she has completed applying the resist to the wrapped strands, it is time for Ban to dye the yarn. Each design is different. Some designs call for a single color, others 2 colors, and some more intricate designs involve 3 or more colors. First, she pulls the yarn off the wrapping frame and soaks it for around 20 minutes while she preps a pot of boiling water. She adds the dye, takes her yarn out of the water, and wrings it out before stirring it into the boiling dye liquid. After around 30 to 45 minutes, she pulls it out, rinses it in cold water, and hangs it to dry. If the design calls for more than 1 color, then she will begin the dye process over again. After dyeing the fabric and allowing the yarn to dry out completely, it is time to take off the resist. Ban carefully removes each piece of plastic, being careful not to cut the yarn in the process. Next, she loads the yarn onto a large spool for separating out the threads so that they won't catch on one another as she spins them onto the spool. She has to carefully walk through the full length of the yarn, making sure that each strand and segment separates freely. After that, the yarn is ready to be separated out into the 2 strands that were wound together and wound onto a smaller spool. Then that spool is used to spin the yarn onto small individual spools that will be used in the shuttle when weaving the final cloth. Yaiban spools the thread onto each small spool, being careful to cut the thread in line with the pattern she has dyed, so that each spool will contain a complete section of the pattern. Now, after many days of labor, Yaiban is ready to begin weaving each spool of dyed yarn into a beautiful cloth. The weaving process takes several days of slowly aligning each pass of the shuttle through the weft and compressing the threads together into cloth. Strand by strand, the intricate pattern she formed begins to take shape until finally she can pick her completed piece of fabric art up off the loom. The amount of love and time poured into each piece of fabric that comes off of Yaiban's loom is evident in its beauty and quality. But will this exquisite tradition of craftsmanship outlive the current generation? When you can go down the street to a store and buy clothes or blankets for half of what it costs to make a piece of fabric like Yaiban's, the motivation to create fabric in the traditional way is quickly fading away. Where once each house in town had its own loom, and there was always a cloth in the works to provide clothing for the family, in our modern age of convenience and competing interest, is there a place left for mudmee? Yaiban will continue to create and share her craft out of her deep love for her culture and pride in her craftsmanship.
ลายที่ง่ายๆยายไม่ชอบ เราทำเองทำได้แล้วก็ภูมิใจเนาะนั่นเขาทำเสร็จเราไปซื้อเอาไม่ภูมิใจยายไม่เอาทำเองดีกว่า
Yaiban takes pride in creating her art and is willing to put in the long hours to make each piece because of her love for the craft. When you love something like Yaiban, the hours go by fast.
กว่าจะได้แต่ละอันนะต้องใช้เวลาต้องรักงานจริงๆที่ทำได้งานที่เรารักทำวันหนึ่งนะไม่นานนะลูก